Hello and welcome to Underlords Universe. This is a place where I usually get together with some of my other creative colleagues and do creative stuff, or well, we discuss the creative stuff that we're into and the stuff that inspires us to be creative. And usually my brother Brent and our bass player Josh is along for the ride. They're not along for the ride today because when I mentioned the Meg movies to them, they were like, mm-mm, no, not going there. So I have a guest, Han. Hi,
Hello.
and you've seen Meg a couple times, right?
Yes, I
Yeah.
have.
Okay. So here's kind of the scoop. We do a musical project. More on that later. Our bass player writes books and stuff, and if you have stumbled across this because you think shark movies are cool or you think the Meg movies are terrible, and you're probably right about that. Um, if you stick with us through the whole thing, God bless you, and maybe we'll drop a little plug for our own creative thing. Um, but I just watched both Meg movies back to back, maybe a week or so ago, something like that. And one of the things that we grew up just loving were monster films. I love sharks just as a, I grew up liking sharks. And I did see the first Meg in the theater just because it's like, okay, this is a Megalodon movie. I got to go see this. I did not go see the second one in the theater. In fact, I didn't even see Meg 2 until about 2 weeks ago or whenever it was I watched it. I was like, okay, I'm finally going to do this. And so yeah, let's just kind of get this out here. Your overall impression of the movies, like, um, I think at the heart of any kind of movie reaction that anybody has, a review or whatever, is it worth watching? Is it worth watching again? So, how many times have you seen these films?
I think I've seen both movies twice. Um, both Meg and Meg 2 on my own, like by myself,
Hmm.
and then both Meg and Meg 2 with with friends. So, kind of like one of those things where I watched it and I was like, "Oh, kind of dumb, kind of entertaining. Great. Get together with your friends. Let's watch this stupid movie that's supposed to be scary, that's not actually scary." Like, let's make commentary on it as we're watching it, kind of thing. So seen
Either,
both movies twice.
and did you see either of them in the theater?
No, I watched both of them on streaming services.
Okay. Okay. So now just for anybody who's out there watching this, you are, I mean, you have a pretty wide breadth of experience watching films and horror films and things like that, of that
Correct.
nature, right?
I'd say I'm a connoisseur of sorts.
Yes. I mean, just as an just to kind of give anybody watching this some kind of background on you. I mean, your viewing has ranged from everything from the Nightmare on Elm Street films all the way through like the Terrifier films and
Yes.
etc.
Cannibal Holocaust, all of the things that you could rank from really bad to really good to this should not have been filmed or shown in theaters.
Yeah, yeah. And you've watched some things that I haven't watched, and I'm grateful for it because then you can tell me about it, and I don't have to subject myself to it.
Yes.
Um, Now that does, beg the question, like at least like self-reflective question. It's like, did I waste my time watching Meg and Meg 2? So, in a sense, no, because it's leading to this discussion, and that I think is worthwhile. First of all, the Meg is it's based on a novel that was written in 1997. I've never read it. I'm tempted to read it though, just to see if it's any better than the movie. I did
I'm
read the
not.
well, it's actually part of a series of novels. And I read the plot summary on Wikipedia and I thought it sounded more interesting and might like it would have made maybe a better movie, but it's still pretty ridiculous. Also, as far as the characters in the film, I don't remember a single character's name
I don't either.
that says something. Um, I've never seen the actor Jason Statham in anything other than these two movies. I don't know.
I either.
I think he's kind of an action star kind of guy, which isn't really my. my cup of tea, but sharks and monsters and stuff that is. So um now a megalodon is part of the Carcharodon genus of sharks. It's actually part of the mackerel family. The only current living shark in that family is the great white. So basically you could say this is, a giant great white. It is
That
also
we know of.
that okay, that
That
we
we know of.
it is also, I think, worth noting the inspiration for Megalodonut Coffee by Bones Coffee Company, which with a splash of milk is quite tasty, folks. Just saying. Okay, so this movie starts out basically establishing characters that I don't care about. I had no interest in these characters. I didn't care about them. Um, by the time the third act of the film rolled around, I was almost tuning out, which is kind of unfortunate because that's where all the real action takes place. Ultimately, I really question whether I would actually ever watch this again. Um, but here's the thing that I want to kind of get into and start with this. Everybody that's seen these movies seems to understand the Meg movies are cheeseball, right? They're just corny and cheesy. Um,
Absolutely. Yeah.
do
You're
you
not watching it to be scared.
Not at all. Do you think that the filmmakers are aware of that? That's the kind of thing I just don't know.
I think yes and no. I think that there's some comedic writing in there. Like if you're, for example, if you're gonna talk like bring in Meg 2 at the end of Meg 2 with the dog and the
Yeah.
the little dog that just keeps swimming and keeps swimming and keeps swimming and somehow the dog survives, right? Like I that was written in there for comedic relief. Like you know that that's in there to be stupid. You know that's in there to kind of keep your attention going because I think by the end of the movie you're most people who are watching are not wanting to continue watching and I'm surprised if somebody's made it that far. I'm the kind of person if I start a movie I'm going to finish it to the end no matter how good or bad or disturbing it is.
Mm.
Uh, so like if I'm thinking of at least Meg 2 and we're analyzing, okay, do the producers know that this is stupid? I'd say yes. An ode to the little Pomeranian dog or Chihuahua dog.
I think it was a Pomeranian. Yeah.
Yeah, like an ode to that. Like I think that's the perfect example of they know it's dumb.
It seems to me that the self-awareness of the stupidity of these movies was more apparent in Meg 2 than in the first one. And I don't recall the directors' names off the top of my head, but I know that they're different directors. And I wonder if the second film was just kind of like, hey, you know what? The first one, it was pretty damn stupid. Let's just embrace the stupidity. Now the problem that I have with that though is these are movies that are like 100+ million dollar films. And it's kind of like if I watch a really low budget movie that's kind of cheesy or maybe an accidental comedy, I like that. But when something's this, expensive to make, to me it's almost like, well, you could have really done something here, but you kind of chose not to. So with that in mind, I'd like to roll through a few scenes from these movies and get your reactions, your commentary on some
Absolutely.
of them. Um, so they have this giant research facility, um, and this kind of billionaire character again, whose name I completely forget. But they have all this equipment. It all looks like it could have been designed, for use in Star Wars, which to me just makes it feel inauthentic. It's like, oh yeah, this doesn't look real. This just looks like, I mean, you'd have it in a video game or something. But this billionaire, he's in the research facility and he has no idea what the scientists that are working in the place that he helped build, he has no idea what they're doing. And I'm thinking, my comment to myself is Elon Musk isn't even that stupid. Um, 15 minutes into the film, you get some reference. There's a holding some sort of a conference, and there's a character that says something like, "You left them down there to die," and it's like I'm thinking, who cares? I don't even know who these people are. They just kind of established that there's this research facility. It's super high tech and with a lot of flashing lights and buttons, and somehow we're supposed to care about these characters that they never established any kind of real backstory about, but we're just supposed to be emotionally invested in their well-being and in their fate. Do you remember that from the
I
film?
do. I do remember that. And I definitely also remember thinking that the underwater facility looked like I would expect Jar Jar Binks to pop out somewhere.
Yeah, fair
And,
enough.
like it did give that Star Wars vibe. And as somebody who's, kind of in the younger generation between Millennial and Gen X,
Hmm.
and that weird spot of generations, for me, it was almost nostalgic to see something like that in a higher quality way. I remember watching episode one, Star Wars, and meeting Jar Jar Binks and just the excitement that I saw. And then coming to Meg and just looking at the difference of graphics. So if we're just looking at it that way, that was a little nostalgic for me because I was like, I love shark movies. I remember watching Jaws. I remember thinking Jaws was so cool. Terrified of the deep end of swimming pools for the longest time in my life. Um, but then I also do kind of like hold the sentiment of, yes, this is a billionaire who has no idea what's going on. Could he be Jeff Bezos? Or does he actually care about these characters? Does he actually care about these researchers? And it really does give that vibe of I'm really more focused on the corruptness of like this kind of plot rather than the characters themselves that are going on these research expeditions,
Hmm.
looking for the Meg, looking for signs of life of the Meg, their, their safety within the movie. So I definitely think that part could have been written better. Um, However, I will have to disagree with the Star Wars thing because for me I do remember watching Star Wars as a little kid and then also seeing this and being so excited about the way that graphics have come so far.
See, and that is an interesting thing, because I remember when the first movie came out, one of the reasons I wanted to go see it was because I wanted to see how they portrayed a prehistoric shark on that scale come back, to life or whatever.
Oh,
I just
absolutely.
wanted to see visually how it was done. And the thing that kind of it always kind of gets me about these kind of big budget blockbuster movies is I always feel left um, disappointed because as good as a lot of the graphics are and the technology, it to me it seems it just almost doesn't it seems almost less real.
Right.
Mhm. And I kind of question, like, why might that be? Just a week or so ago, there was the 50th anniversary of Jaws, and it was rebroadcast on like NBC or something. And it was like, the shark they used in Jaws is clearly especially at the end when it's the mechanical shark, and it's like, okay, modern audiences today, I mean, you're younger than I am, you might look at that and go, oh my God, that looks so cheesy, it looks so fake. But everything else around it was so real. The
Right.
ocean looked real. The boat looked real. Everything else was so real that for me it was easier to buy into a mechanical shark from 1975 than it is. It's harder for me to buy into like the stuff today because everything is so glossy and so.
Right.
How much do you think that is a matter of the time that you grow up and the generation that you're a part of?
Oh gosh, I don't know because there are movies that are older that, for example, take Nightmare on Elm Street. Like I would prefer a movie like Nightmare on Elm Street or Halloween or even the beginning movies of the Scream series.
Mhm.
I would prefer movies like that maybe somebody that is my younger brother's age would watch and think, wow, that's so cheesy, over something that is, like Terrifier or something that would come out more modern day. Like, for example, I just watched the newest Paranormal Activity movie yesterday, last night,
Hmm.
and that came out in 2021. And the first thought that I had was, wow, this doesn't look documentary style. It doesn't look like the camera, like the in-home cameras that in the early 2010s when the first Paranormal Activities came out. It looked authentic. And then so I kind of can get onto the boat where you're saying it looks too glossed over because there are definitely some movies where I get where CGI or high graphics can really affect the tone
Hmm.
of the movie. Um, and I also kind of wanted to jump back to your comment about when you first saw the first Meg in theaters, it piqued your interest to see how they would depict this prehistoric shark, right? We actually don't know what they look like, right? Like we have no idea what the megalodon looks like. We don't know what a T-Rex looks like. And so it almost gets into the theory of thought of, is it better left unseen? Would the movie have been better had we not saw the Meg? Had we
Well,
not saw something CGI? Like would that heighten your senses and your cortisol?
and I think, yeah, and I think that gets into, what kind of movie are they trying to make? Are they trying to make a movie that's just a bunch of like a thrill ride type of movie, or are you trying to make a movie that's got some sort of sense of suspense?
Right. And I think
And
we tried to do that with the first one, but the second one was not it. That wasn't there with
yeah,
that
the
one.
second one's cornball. I mean, well, they're both pretty corny, but well, yeah.
Yes.
I here's another note I had on this. This gets into kind of the story element of it. Um, so they go to Thailand to get what is his name? Jason Statham, right? Okay. And which when they broke, yeah, when they broke the scene to go over to Thailand to get this Jason Statham character, um, they the music that they had in it was that old song, the "Oh Mickey, You're So Fine," whatever
Right.
when I remember watching that and thinking that would never be in Jaws. Like movies that do that, when you bring in some sort of like classic song like that as part of a part of the soundtrack, that tells you what kind of film you're watching.
Right.
And it's like that would never fit into like a John Williams scored film. Um,
Yes. Agree.
and that right there just it's like, oh, okay. All right. So anyway, 42 minutes into the movie, I made a note of this. 42 minutes in, deep sea experts sitting around a table discussing the absolute basic info about Megalodon that any grade school kid might know. Like they're almost sitting around going, "Wow, it's got big teeth. It's got, it's this big. It's whatever." And it's like these are all scientists or science-minded people on a deep sea research facility, and they're telling each other this basic information about this long extinct shark. Now, there's only one reason for that. It's to tell the person sitting in the audience what the shark is. That's the worst kind of exposition in my mind for me. I would think it would be much better if you had had one of those characters for their own personal experience say, "You're never going to believe what I think I saw," and
Right.
the rest of them being just like, "No, dude, that shark's been extinct for what 65 million years or whatever." It's like you're crazy. You need to you're we need to eject you from this scientific
Mhm.
expedition that we're doing. Um, and the whole plot could have been written around this one guy or a couple of them trying to convince the rest of them that this thing is real, which could have worked perfectly with what you're saying about not showing the darn thing very,
Right.
using it as a suspense piece rather than, just a roller coaster ride of big, and
of
it's
action.
yeah, yeah. But then you're getting into, okay, then you're talking about a completely different movie. A different movie
Yeah.
with a different kind of target audience, with a different kind of, sensibility. Which would you have preferred? Would you prefer it to just be kind of the big dumb summer blockbuster movie that it is, or would you have preferred something a little bit more intellectual and a little darker?
I think it really depends. I kind of have I kind of have a respect for the fact that it was a blockbuster dumb movie because right now you're seeing a lot of different production agencies trying to come out with new ideas and come out with things that are going to scare people and come out with things that are going to get people thinking. And it's almost like a palate cleanser of
Hmm.
wow, this was so stupid. Like I remember why I continue to watch suspense movies or horror movies is because I have not found a movie yet that has given me the same feeling as other movies. So to me, I like that it was a blockbuster stupid movie because one, I can say, yeah, I watched Meg and it was really dumb. But
Oh yeah.
it was dumb enough to where I thought it was good like a dog, like an ugly dog is cute. So like you sometimes just need those movies to give you that reminder of why you're on the hunt for a
Hmm.
good scary movie or a good shark movie or a good whatever kind of movie you're looking for. Um, I think too, I watched a movie, I think it was called Under Paris or something like that. It's another shark movie, and that was a lot more intellectual. There was a lot of scientific researchers that were talking about these sharks that have basically swam into the channels of Paris and are swimming in the catacombs and how they have genetically changed themselves to be able to reproduce asexually and live in fresh water in the catacombs.
Hmm.
Like there are movies like that where it gets more into the intellectual side of, oh, this is making me think. Oh, now that I have more of this information, I'm kind of more on the edge of my seat because I want to see what these sharks are going to do. I want to see what's going to happen to these characters. And then you have movies like Meg where it's just, I'm not scared of the ocean because this is so stupid. Where, people in your generation and people in my mom's generation, I mean, you're the same generation,
Hmm.
um, have that experience with Jaws where they watched Jaws as a child or as a teenager and they were scared shitless. And so I, to make a long story short, I really think I preferred it as the blockbuster stupid movie because it continues my hunt for a movie that really truly like scares me.
Hmm. It's interesting. I think you make an interesting point about sometimes you just need a movie where you can turn your brain off a little bit, um, and just kind of go along for the ride. Um, and if everybody liked the same thing, and if everybody was looking for the same thing, the world would be pretty boring.
Yes,
So it just kind of comes down to like, is this your cup of tea, or in this case, is it your cup of
coffee.
megalodonut coffee? Um, yeah, there are loads of scenes in this movie that just made me cringe. And I have to say this, I find I find great entertainment value in watching some of these kinds of movies and taking note of how damn stupid it is. Um, like they have some sort of detector in this facility. They don't even say what these boats are, but it's like, oh, there's three boats that have gone down. We need to go out and check it out. So what do? They go out there on a boat to check out these boats that have gone down. And one of the characters says to another character, says something about, well, it eats boats. This megalodon, which they've all now kind of accepted exists, it eats boats, and they're all out there on a boat. It's like that's a good idea. I mean, not sure what the alternative would be, but I'm sure they could come up with something.
And that's where I question
Submarines.
the first question of did they write it to be this way? That's where I really think did they write it to be this stupid?
Well, you almost have to wonder. But there are some missed opportunities because when they get out there on the boat, it is, I mean, it is there are sequences that are like lifted straight from Jaws. It's almost like they're
Right.
making yeah, and um like because they got a crane thing that's kind of holding like the shark vessel cage thing down and it breaks and stuff. That all comes straight from Jaws. But
Oh, absolutely. That was something I noticed as well.
they missed an opportunity. One of the characters should have said something like, "Wait a second, you've all seen Jaws, right?" You know.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like that would have been perfect. That would have been a really great way to like kind of tip your hat to the OG shark movie
Right.
and also kind of bring it all into the universe of like, okay, you've seen Jaws. Obviously, like from Jaws, we can want to continue this research. We want to continue research on sharks. Like it would have put a universe together that could have gone and come so far.
And it also could have said, but don't mistake this for a movie trying to be like Jaws,
Right,
because it is
exactly.
not. It's a different kind of movie. But that whole sequence is just ridiculous because it's like he's gonna he, he's not gonna go into any kind of protective cage. He's gonna go out there on a cable and then presumably so that he can be pulled back in if trouble arises. But then when the shark does go after him and they start pulling him back in, then one of the other characters says something about, "Oh my God, the vibrations from the cable are gonna, attract." And it's like
It's going to
none of
attract more.
none of this makes any sense at all. And it's like, so there are some viewers who it's like, "Oh my God, this doesn't make sense," and then they hate it. There's other people like me who it's like, this doesn't make sense. I don't like it, but I'm really enjoying knocking it. That's where it becomes kind of fun for me a little bit. But that is a completely ridiculous. They hoist this. I looked up how much a megalodon would have weighed, and it's estimated probably 50 plus tons. And it's like, okay, so they have that thing hanging from, in the boat itself. And it's like at that point you have to kind of say this movie's, it's supposed to be stupid. Um, then you get into Act Three. A bunch of beachgoers get eaten. Here's my note: a bunch of beachgoers get eaten. Statham stabs the shark with his submersible, and then a bunch of smaller sharks eat it. End. And it's like, okay, that's the end of the movie. Done. Um,
It
Meg,
doesn't really give a leeway into the second movie either. Like it doesn't give
no,
an opportunity to expand on the plot of the first movie to be like, yes, this like to be continued kind of
no, and
thing.
that could be because there might have been the question as to whether or not there would be a sequel. I have read that both of these movies were also partially um, made for the Chinese market. Yeah, that they're not necessarily for an entirely American audience. So, there's some things could be related to that too. But I also thought this was kind of interesting. Apparently, Meg 2 begins the way the first novel begins. The scene at the beginning of Meg 2, the screen says the Cretaceous period, which is about 65 million years ago. And then it has this T-Rex kind of coming out and near the beach, and the megalodon comes up and chomps it. And it's like
Right.
we have no evidence of sharks like that beaching themselves to go after prey. I mean,
Yes.
there's
And
some
there's no way they would have been able to get up that far, I don't think. Like in a
mm,
theoretical sense of
yeah.
thought.
Well, yeah, I mean there actually are some orcas off the coast of South America that will do that. So it's not in 100% completely ridiculous, except for the size of this thing. Um,
Yes.
I
I said
looked,
50 tons compared to an orca.
yeah, yeah.
Like,
Um, I was curious. I knew that they didn't live at the same period, but I was curious, so I looked it up. They're about 20 million years apart in terms of their lifespan. So
A T-Rex Megalodon?
yeah, and but it's kind of like okay, whatever. It's just a stupid movie, right? Um, so the thing about and we don't need to go through every single note on this. If we did that, this video would be like 5 hours long. But it, they start off in Meg 2 with they make a reference to they've got one in captivity, which just getting a great white in captivity to survive is impossible, basically.
Right.
So doing a megalodon in captivity, it's kind of like if you're using some sort of basis of like of reality as a baseline, it's kind of like that's a little okay. But let's see where you go with it. And
Right.
ultimately, they go nowhere with it. They don't take, there's nothing about a shark, a megalodon in captivity that has anything to do with the rest of the movie. Nothing. And
Yeah.
it's like, why? It's almost like they were writing this movie and they wrote different, maybe they had three different writers write act one, two, and three, not knowing what the three different writers were doing, and they just glued it all together. Because then
And
in
that's
act
such an
two,
interesting. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
oh no, well, I was just gonna say Act Two is mostly about this kind of, I don't know, clandestine espionage stuff and uh the Mariana Trench
Right.
in the Pacific and it's like and then they're down there and this is what kind of really kind of made me roll my eyes about Meg 2. The okay, they have to walk about 25,000 feet down. They have to walk about 1.8 miles. They say 3 kilometers. That's 1.8 miles. They're in about 1,000 times the pressure of the sea level, which would be
Yes.
8 tons per square inch. That just wouldn't work. And now I know someone might say, well, it's a stupid movie. It's like you got this gigantic shark. It's not supposed to be realistic. Well, my whole point is this. Why put it in the Mariana Trench then? I mean, it's like you could just be at any other point, in the ocean. There's
Right.
no point. It's like if you're going to use something that's based in reality, use some of that reality to help create this suspension, that I can suspend my disbelief. But it's like, just what's the point then? Um,
Yeah, I definitely do think that, not even think, I do know when I watched Meg 2 both times, specifically in that scene, I also had the same thought of, oh my God, this is like like that just would have killed them. All of that pressure
yeah.
would have just completely destroyed them. Like it would have destroyed their bones, destroyed the way that their organs work. Like it just is not, that part is not based in reality. And there are some times, like when I'm watching movies, horror movies to be exact,
Mhm.
where I'm like, wow, that's really unrealistic. And the only time, and like things that are not realistic, where I'm okay with it is if I know the whole movie is completely unrealistic, like the Terrifier movies. I go into those movies and I'm like, nothing of this movie is based in realism. So why am I expecting it to be good?
Mm. Um, y- that's so because what we're talking about here is the suspension of disbelief, right? Can you suspend your disbelief enough to be entertained by, you know, what you're watching? And some of this stuff does get back to, I mean, there's a little bit of snobbery that comes along with some of this. Susan and I went and saw Neil deGrasse Tyson, the astrophysicist.
Hmm.
He gave a big lecture about space and the movies, and he was highly entertaining. But he knows and understands so much about space and the cosmos that he can see when movies are screwing up and being really stupid. And so the more you know about something, the more likely it is that you're going to have a difficult time suspending disbelief and then just being entertained. So
Absolutely. I would totally agree with that.
that can be kind of a hindrance in just simply letting go. And on the other hand, you can learn some things because there's a great line actually in Meg 2. At one point, a character says, "You don't see fish wearing metal suits, do you?" And
Yeah.
I actually paused it, and because I was curious, like, why is that? Because there are actually creatures that can survive at the depths. So they have what's called trimethylene N oxide in their bodies, which
I did know this.
oh, you did?
I did know about trimethylene and inoxide.
And
I can't say it,
and
but
N oxide. It's the letter.
in N oxide.
Yeah. And it makes their bodies basically incompressible because they're mostly water. So
Right.
if the vast majority of your body is water, there's very little to compress.
That's why if you bring a blobfish up, they don't look like a blobfish anymore. They look terrifying.
Yeah, that exactly. So, ladies and gents, you can learn something if you just raise questions, if you just ask. Um, so at any rate, Act 3 in Meg 2 doesn't seem to have anything to do with Act 1 or Act 2. It's just, oh, look, now they're back on this beach. Oh, and there's also a giant octopus. Um, I think it's a giant octopus, isn't it?
The squid.
Or yeah, giant squid. I
But yeah,
do
it
think
kind of gave me like a, okay, now we're bringing Kraken into this.
that would be cool. I I actually thought of all the scenes in both Meg 1 and Meg 2. The
Hmm.
the the thing that I actually said, okay, now I'm on board, was the very end when the Jason Statham character takes that broken helicopter um, propeller
Oh
and
yeah.
the megalodon is like coming out of the water and he jabs it through the mouth, right? It's
Right.
like
Yeah.
first of all, like he could hold up a helicopter blade on his own anyway. And I mean, it was so ridiculous and so absurd that that's where I said to myself, the people that made this are not taking this very seriously because they
Right.
they seem to understand how stupid this is. So to kind of bring this to kind of some sort of conclusion, um, me personally, I kind of get it's like if they understand that they're making a stupid movie, that's fine. If I were to do that, I would cut out any scene that has any sense of sentimentality because it just falls flat in movies like that. It's like
Right.
a scene where like,
I agree with
the character, her dad dies or whatever. It's like we don't care. Just cut it
yeah.
out. Um, and I would just embrace it wholeheartedly. I would just make it like the dumbest thing imaginable. But I do come back to that idea of if you're working with such a massive budget and you presumably have writers that understand how to write stories, you would think,
Would hope.
you'd hope. I would prefer myself. I think this is maybe where you and I don't necessarily agree. We both agree these are stupid movies. Um, I'd still love to see a really well done suspenseful movie based on this idea. If I could do a kind of a compare, like a parallel, it's like Godzilla movies.
Yes.
The old Godzilla movies, they're so corny that I love them. They're ridiculous. The more modern Godzilla movies, I just haven't liked at all. Um,
I would agree. I would agree. And
but
I feel the same
with
way about King Kong.
yes, exactly. There's one exception though, and that is Godzilla minus one. Because I think in Godzilla minus one, they took it seriously. Like if this were to exist, how would everything else realistically revolve around it?
Right.
Whereas everything else is just kind of like, oh, big stupid creature, let's just make a big stupid movie. And that tends to not work as well for me. But
Hmm.
but you're a different viewer and
Yeah, and I wonder, okay, and so hear me out.
Mhm.
I wonder if gender comes into play when it comes to
Mm.
something like this. So, because you say you would prefer like a big stupid movie and like the sentimental things cut out, especially if these writers are writing for example, like Meg 2, like it seems like they had a really good understanding of like this movie was a dumb movie, right? And so you would prefer the sentimental things to be cut out. However, like for me, some of the sentimental things is kind of what kept me on the cusp of, oh, is this a good movie or is this a bad movie? Like there
Right.
were some plot points, like going back to the dog, like as stupid as that was, part of me in my head was like, please don't kill an animal on this, like in this movie. Like in the back of my mind, as all of these scenes were, because there's only like three scenes in the last 45 minutes of the movie with that dog in it.
Hmm.
For most of that 45 minutes, my brain was focused on this dog. Like, don't kill off a dog in this movie. When the woman's dad died, I was like, wow, like I would feel the same way if I, had this lifelong research that I had done with my dad and he gets killed by his craft. Like that is kind of where I teetered on do I see this movie as a good movie or do I see it as just a stupid hee hee ha ha movie? And so for me, I do like a lot of like the sentimental things in horror movies or suspense movies or action movies because it seems personable. It seems like even if they're based in non-reality, it brings a little bit of reality into it. And so I wonder if this kind of concept on stupid scary movies or stupid suspense and action movies has a little bit of gendered like ideology behind it as well.
I think it's an interesting question. Yeah, I don't know. I think I guess anytime somebody does something creative, whether you're writing a book or you're, doing a screenplay for a film or whatever, um, you have to figure out like what's the balance of
Right.
these ingredients that we have to put into it. And, I think at the core, when a movie like this is being made with an audience in mind or a certain range of demographics in mind. And so they're probably, I'm just kind of guessing here, but they're probably kind of trying to hit certain notes,
Oh
along
yeah.
the way, as opposed to um, just a filmmaker with a vision. So, like
Right.
to do a Star Wars comparison, I'm not as critical of the sequel trilogy as some people are. I understand some of the criticisms of them. I'm in some ways more critical of the prequel trilogy, but I'll
Right.
say this. I'll say this. I think at least Star Wars episodes one, two, and three, whether you like them or not, it was George Lucas's vision. It's like he had an artistic vision of what he wanted to create. And the sequel trilogy, what would be seven, eight, and nine, it to me kind of comes across as like, hey, we're Disney. We need to make sure that X number of people like this movie, so we need to make a movie for these audiences.
Right.
And you know, th that's fine. It's like I don't know if one's necessarily better than the other. Um, I guess it just comes down to, what's your mood, what you're looking for.
Mhm.
I think a lot of
The generation you grew up in.
the generation you grew up in, your gender identity, your racial background. I mean, all of these things play into how you take in a film. And I think a lot
Interesting.
of times we take from movies um, what I don't just want to say what we expect out of them, although there is that. But none of us go into any kind of movie as just a blank slate. We
Right.
have preconceptions, we have ideas, and those things are going to help kind of shape the way we walk out of the theater or the way we react to it when we're watching it.
We take in movies the way we see ourselves, I think, is maybe what you're trying to say.
That's an interesting. Can you explain that a little bit? That's an interesting statement.
For me, like taking in a movie like the way that I take in a movie is the way that I see myself. Like for example, as I was talking about Meg, I'm
Mhm.
a very emotional person. I work in life or death. I work in high stress, critical situations and I do a lot of therapy work. I do a lot of counseling work where what I want from a movie or what I want from something is to feel something. Do I want to feel scared?
Mm,
Do I want to feel sad? Do I want to feel happy? I'm looking for in movies is the emotion behind a movie. What can this movie make me feel? Especially with scary movies. Like I don't think I've watched a movie since Sinister, like the two Sinister movies, that has had genuinely made me feel scared, with the exception um of Hereditary. I will say
mm.
Hereditary did freak me out a little bit. But when I'm watching movies, like I want to see myself in those movies. I want to see emotion in those movies. I want to
So
see something that I can relate to at a very deep and personal level.
can I, that raises a question in my mind then. Can that happen even with a stupid movie like The Meg or Meg 2?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. Like I had some heartstring tugs when the father died, when the dog, I'm coming back to this stupid little Pomeranian swimming in
Mhm.
the ocean, is this dog gonna survive?
Okay. I have another follow-up to that, a very similar one. So when you say like, oh, I want to, feel something watching a movie, I want to, regardless of what the emotion is, can that also just simply be the kind of the mindless suspension of disbelief and just the roller coaster ride of, you know, the silly, ridiculous action that takes place?
I
Or
think
or
so.
the inconsistencies in the story, like, hey, you did this, but now you're saying this, and that doesn't work. And I mean, does that fall in line with like your what you say you're looking for in a particular movie?
Oh yeah, like if a movie is not done well, if it's inconsistent or, suspension of disbelief, like if I see something where it's completely unrealistic to me, I'm immediately disengaged because the emotions that I put behind the viewership have been cut, cut at that
Mhm.
moment. And it's hard for me to retie that string to continue those emotions.
It's
And so,
interesting.
like, I need very, very strong writing. And you don't see that a lot right now. Like, especially in the horror movie community, you don't see a lot of that done well outside of very few modern things that have, happened. Sinners. Haven't watched it yet, but so many
Mhm.
people have like said so many great things. Nosferatu. So many people
Mhm.
have said so many amazing things about that movie. Um, a lot of the A24 movies that have come out. A24 is my favorite,
Mhm.
suspense horror kind of production studio because they have done the best with modern day horror movies. As opposed to Meg, like there are those inconsistencies within the plot of like this is a multi-million-dollar movie and you have so many inconsistencies within the plot. And so there were those small things that I really held on to, hoping that it would bring the emotion of the viewer back.
Okay. So, okay, this is interesting, and you and I, it seems like when we start talking about these things, we could just keep going and going because we'll go down one rabbit hole, then another one, and another one, which is fine. I think it's always enlightening uh, to hear what you have to say about whether it's movies or music or whatever, because you do have a generational difference, and the banter that we have is always, I think, enlightening and kind of fun. But I'd like to kind of close out, unless you have some other thoughts of your own on
I
this.
have no more thoughts on
You
this
do more
movie.
thoughts. Okay. So here's here's my question then. On a rewatch, like on the level of like how rewatchable are the Meg movies for you? Like, would you actually spend the time to watch them again at some point? Or are you kind of like, nah, been there,
Maybe
done.
not to like fully pay attention. Like if I were working, maybe I'd throw it on as background noise, but I wouldn't fully like rewatch it unless I was doing like an in-depth plot analysis of it.
Mhm.
Like a very in-depth plot analysis.
Which
So no. So Ar- To beat around the bush, the answer
Right.
is
Yeah. Okay. And I'm that's where I'm at with it. When when the guys and I when we do like music stuff, we have a like a rating system that we use when we're rating albums and stuff like that. And it's like, I thought about, can we do that with movies? But ultimately what we do, and I think I failed to mention this at the very beginning. This is how inexperienced I am at this. It's all right. Um, we're going to put anything we do with movies, we're going to put into the category on our page of what's called the movie mausoleum. And as you know,
oh yeah, I
uh,
remember you telling me about this.
yeah, so a movie, obviously a mausoleum is a place where, you place dead people. So the question is, for an older movie, should it be resurrected? Or if it's a more modern movie, should it just be die? Should it be killed and put into the mausoleum?
Yeah, it should be.
Okay, so
Yes.
your verdict is this movie should just go into the mausoleum.
Yes.
Okay.
I don't think there's any way for the producers of Meg to be able to come back with a movie that has sustenance behind it.
Well, you know what? I've heard that Meg 3 is in the works, so we'll see.
Oh, well,
Um, yeah.
we all know I'll watch it. So,
Well, and I probably will too. So yeah. So at any rate, um, so folks, if you've enjoyed this conversation, I know I have, and if you've stuck with it, and if you have thoughts on Meg or Meg 2, plot inconsistencies, absurd events that took place in the films, whatever, and you have comments that you want to make, please put them down below. You could also like and subscribe. And as I mentioned at the beginning of our video here, I'm a part of a creative conclave of guys. They're slightly less active on YouTube. I'm kind of the one who got relegated to running this thing. But we do a musical project. It started off as instrumental rock music, and then it turned into kind of this conceptual thing. And we refer to it as the Underlords of the Overworld, which is a self-deprecating title if one just considers the words. And our bass player wrote a backstory, kind of an alternate history, alternate universe backstory. Um, I think he's a good writer, and I'm gonna say this. I'm gonna say he writes better stories than the Meg. I'll just put it that way. And he's got a spin-off series called the OAO, which is the Ordo Abstrusis Oculus. It's kind of an occult themed it, series of investigations. It's just corny stuff. It's fun. It's pretty lighthearted. He also has a book of short stories. His books, he writes under the name H. Prescott Lemon, which is a nod to H.P. Lovecraft. And you can find his stuff on Amazon. You can find our stuff on streaming services. Um, it's out there. Support local or independent artists. We don't make money doing it. We go in debt doing it. So, but we have had people reach out to us from, as far away from, as Canada, New York, and Italy. So it's kind of cool. We reach people here and there, and it's kind of nice when someone says, "Hey, I heard this," or I looked at it and I thought it was really cool. And so, like, subscribe, comment, do all that stuff, yada yada, blah blah blah. Um, Han, are you
I have nothing to add currently.
okay?
I Once my health conditions have been alleviated, that is when I hope to get more into my creative part of the I watched it so you didn't have to series that I want to put up. So,
Oh, you're still thinking about doing that.
yes.
I like it. So well, we'll see what the future has in store. And in the meantime, everybody out there, toodles.